All right, so let's go ahead and just do a quick recap on our scene here. As I play through it, we have a lot of empty space here in the middle of the actual shot, and it's kind of boring. And we want to add some sort of flair to it, so it's not just this boring scene where we have kind of a cool intro and then a cool outro and nothing in between. So what I would like to do is extend the animation of the first harvester from shot number 1. As you know, it's kind of lingering back here, and we'd like to have it kind of go down this way right here. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the first harvester. And let's go ahead and frame that up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my outliner and grab the first harvester and hit F to frame. You can kind of get an idea of where it's at. And make sure I'm in my perspective view. There we go. All right, so looking at the animation, we're going to have to kind of back trail here. So I'm going to go ahead and extend my animation back to frame 1 and just see where the animation of the harvester is. So if we kind of come through here, it comes to about frame 140 and stops. So what we can do is we can keep the animation going to 483. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my actors so I kind of know where all the actors are at. So if you can see, here's the scene. The actor comes out right here and just kind of stops. And I want to be able to get this thing kind of close like over here so it sort of turns. So we're going to do a little trick of the cards here. We know that the official first shot, as we can see here, ends around 143. So this harvester here, his last animation frame was 142. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep that animation going, but in between here and around frame 160, we're really not going to, we're going to do a little bit of a jump, but not too much of a jump. So I want to kind of prep this a little bit where we're just kind of cheating and kind of jumping ahead of ourselves. So at frame 161, I'm going to go ahead and put out the animation so that this is out a little bit here and a little bit here. And it's going to look like a cheat, actually. So I'm going to just rotate this and bring it back here. For now, we'll just set a key at 160. So at frame 160, I can see I'm a little too far into the shot. So again, here I'm going to just go tear off copy, go back to perspective here. And let's kind of path where we want this. So I'm going to bring it so that it's about here. So I'll hit S. And we'll extend the animation out. And I'll just keep this thing moving forward, as you can see. But as I kind of move it forward, it's not getting into the scene too well, and I want to really get it in farther out here. So I'm going to change the angle a little bit. So I'm going to use my little tick mark here to go back to the last frame and change the rotation value so that the angle is just a little bit better, and hit S. And now I'll just go ahead and play with it by moving it in object mode. And I'll just go ahead and move it back and forth. And we can see if I come to the last frame, 480, but if I extend this out, we'll still be able to see the harvester in the background. And again, just go ahead and test to see, are we getting a nice reveal of the harvester here? And I think we are this time. I want to see the top of it. Before we were so close to it, we couldn't see it. And it just looks really nice. Now we're going to go ahead and judge this by going into our camera 2. And we'll go ahead, we can turn off our actor now. Let's bring in the camera 2 and kind of scrub through here and see where the harvester is landing. There is a little bit of a hill right there if you haven't noticed. It's kind of like, see if I can kind of pull it up a little bit here. It's right here. So we kind of have to play with it a little bit and see, how does it look. We might as well bring in the second harvester too and make sure that these two are not going to crash into each other. So as you can see here, we're going to kind of start at 143 and this is the animation kind of going through. Scrubbing it through here. So we're getting a lot of action in this. It has a nice overlay effect when we go to our camera. And we can see here's this harvester that just comes out of nowhere, which is really cool. And it has a nice reveal. And of course, then we got our third harvester back here with our grenades, explosions, which we can kind of add in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a look at 143. So I'm going to reset this to 143 as the time slider intro. And we're going to see through this entire animation and just to see exactly, how it looks and so forth. All right, as you can see here, I'll go ahead and play through our animation. We now have a fuller scene and we have the harvester coming through, the first harvester coming through into our second scene, and then we get this nice ending here with the harvester getting blown up. What I want you to take note of is the fact that we don't have any animation set up on suspension and wheels here, and we do have a hill behind here that kind of uplifts on the right-hand side of this harvester. So we're going to actually bring that into the actual ground plane and then animate the wheels according to the topology of the ground. So the first thing I want to do to get rid of that stupid error that we were having earlier where we were like getting cached information and had to hit escape a million times is to go over to dynamics, extend out our entire time slider here, and we'll go ahead and I'll just go ahead and turn off camera 2 really quick. And we're going to go to solvers, create particle disk cache. And before we did this just for the actual grenade particles, but for this case, we're going to go ahead and cache all. Instead of selected, we're going to choose all and hit create. And we're going to override what we had before, and we'll go ahead and hit yes. And it's going to go through and cache all particles. The reason why we're getting sort of this backup problem is because we have hidden particles that we haven't turned on yet in regards to the ground tread, dust, and the plumes of smoke coming off the engines. And those are kind of in the back of the scene, basically creating problems with caching because of this huge scene. So what we want to do is just cache them as they are now. And in doing so, we'll be able to scrub through here without having that stupid problem as we had earlier. Again, these are just glitches inside of Maya that we have to deal with. As you can see here, we've recached our actual grenade explosives, but we've cached pretty much everything that is cacheable, which is nice. So the next step here is to kind of work with the topology and to build it up along the right-hand side of this harvester. So there's a little hill there, and there's something to animate so that we can get these wheels to look like this thing is actually taking on ground and hitting suspension and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hide harvester 2 and 3. We only want to deal with 1. We want to get our ground plane up and running here, and I'll just turn on wireframe on shaded so we can kind of see the tessellation of what's going on. In perspective mode, I want to unreference my ground plane here, and we're going to go under polygons, mesh, smooth, and we're going to go ahead and smooth this a couple times. I'll just go ahead and grab the mesh and smooth it until we get a couple divisions in there. That way we get some sort of definition. We could even probably go one more time. It starts to kind of slow down our scene just a touch, but that's fine. We want to get as much detail as possible here. So I kind of know in the general area that this is where I have this hill that kind of matches up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hide my harvester real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and deselect this actual ground. I'm going to use what's called a soft mod tool that's always located right here on your actual control panel. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just tap anywhere with this. And what you get is this kind of radius color scheme where yellow is the most intense and then your fall off goes to red and black. So to change that, if we back up a little bit, we start to see this little hourglass down here. We can tap that, and this kind of gives us the nuclear bomb radius, so to speak, and kind of brings it in like that. And then we can kind of click it back. And at this time, I can go ahead and just move this up and down. If I want to move it along the actual geometry, I can click back on my hourglass and move it along, and then click back and then raise it up and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back about right here. And let's just kind of turn off and on harvester number 1. And we'll go ahead and kind of pull this up a little bit to kind of create the hill. I want to be very careful not to accidentally select the harvester itself when I start making these. So I'll just tap it again here, pull up the harvester, kind of bring up the hill a little bit, and then grab one right here. And at this point, I probably want to start making smaller little hills. I want to come over here now, maybe create a little baby hill right here. And I'm doing this all around the frame of 320 and 260 and so forth, because this is where the hill is actually located. So if I go ahead and, again, turn off the harvester, and I'll go ahead and create a hill here, except this time I'm going to go ahead and change the radius size a little bit smaller so that I can kind of play around with this and just make a series of little holes. And again, I want to kind of update this. The size is not that big. And I'll go ahead and just put a few in here. And if we're looking close enough, we'll notice that if I grab any one of these curves, there's animation on them from our previous shot 1 motion, which is back here. So what we have to do, basically, is to animate these by staying at 200. And whatever we had a key on before, we're going to go ahead and set a key. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to set a key for these two. So I'm going to set a key for the frame control and the body control. I hit S at 200. I'll go ahead and set a frame here for the actual shovel. And then the shovel control. And same thing for anything that I can see on here that has animation. So it's sort of like an anchor key, so they don't create any interpolation on the backwards run. So you can see here, there's no animation here, that's fine. If there's any tires here, I'm going to go ahead and just set a key for them. So I'll just grab every one of these. I know it's going to be an issue. and hit S. So I got a key for those. Now for suspension, is there anything in here that I can see that has keys? I only have to keyframe anything that has already been keyed. So I'm going to come in here, grab this one, and just kind of take a look around. So far, I'm not seeing anything. So with that, we can now begin to animate. So I'm going to go ahead and choose between the Panels Orthographic Harvester 1 Anim Side and start judging animation according to this, as well as go ahead and use my perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off explosions, grenade particles, and grenade. Let's reference our ground plane. And what we're going to do here is go ahead and create a suspension cycle in the same way you create a walk cycle or a run cycle, but it has to do with this top-heavy harvester bobbing back and forth like a baby carriage. So the first thing we want to definitely make sure is under preferences, we choose this from play every frame, which is particle stuff, to real-time 24 frames per second so that we can see animation. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our full body control curve, and I'm going to go ahead and jump over to our side view, and we're going to be able to show you the benefits of using this parented system of perspective or orthographic views side and front. So what I'm going to definitely do is, you can see we've got frame 200 right here as far as the beginning. We're going to do a frame cycle of 260. So I'll just leave it as is, and we'll just go ahead to 210, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this just a touch, and then use my translate in object mode and move it forward a little bit. So it's kind of like this bobbing or kneeling forward. And then I'll just go to 220 and again set the same key. And then I'll come back to 200 for our level key, and copy that, and then go to 230 and paste it. And then at 240, we're going to go ahead and bob backwards. So I'll go ahead and take this, and I'll go ahead and just twist it a little bit backwards, and I'll start to translate this back a little bit and down a little bit, and hit S, and make a double key of that by hitting S again. And finally, we're going to go back and continue on from frame 200 here to 260 and go ahead and hit paste. So that's kind of like this kind of rigid animation. So I'm going to set this, kind of pull this in to 260 so we can kind of get an idea what the animation is doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and let's just judge and see what we got here. And I'm going to kind of stop this and kind of move it so it's kind of above the ground plane. I just want to look at the suspension, not all the action going on the ground. As you can see, this is looking really rigid and boring, so we're going to have to go into our graph editor. And if we go ahead and take a look, what we have here is animation from shot 1, and then here's where animation shot 2 begins after frame 200. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these individually. So I'll go to Translate X, and what we're going to do is we're going to take these base keys and we're going to set those to linear. We're going to set the outer keys, the curves here, to spline. And I'll go through Translate Y here, take a look at that. And if you kind of take a look at it, you have this kind of dip, which should match up with this one. So we'll kind of go with the middle ground here. I'll hold down Shift and middle mouse button up and down. And let's get these to kind of match up as best we can. Here we go. And again, I'm going to take these and spline them, and take these keys, and I'm going to go ahead and linear these so we get that nice continuing cycle as we cycle through here. There's nothing on Translate Z. Well, there's a little bit of Translate Z, so we can kind of grab these and do a kind of a mid-ground balancing act here. Take these keys, again, linear, set these to spline. There's nothing going on, rotate X or Y. And finally we come to rotate Z, which is where most of the animation is occurring. So I'm going to grab these and set them again to linear, and grab the out and create these to spline. So now we can kind of come in here and just play our animation through. We get a nice bobbing action, as you can see. Now, what I can do, if I go ahead and extend this out, I might want to actually kind of make this a little bit shorter in length as far as how fast. Maybe I want to make it bob a lot faster. So what I can do is I can come to frame 200, hold down Shift, and left mouse drag through here to like whatever frame I want here, and then use these outer arrows to scale this in. And I'll scale this to about 250, so this kind of falls on 250. So what we have here, I'll go ahead and show you the last key given in is 250.14, so it's kind of a weird number. Regardless, we don't have to be right on the money with these, just one frame above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come to frame 200, move to frame 201, one frame up basically. Hold down Shift, left mouse drag across till I get all the keys except for the first key and hit copy. Come to the basically where this key is and move it up one frame. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll go ahead and hit paste. And then I'll come to this frame, move it up one frame and hit paste. Same here. And we'll do that for paste right there. So this kind of just continues on. So let's go ahead and take a look at how fast the animation is going. It's pretty fast, but it's not too crazy. Again, this will make sense when we start to put in the suspension and the wheels kind of bobbing up and down and so forth and animating. We just get a nice bobbing action in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to my camera 2, turn on my camera 2 node here, and why not we just go ahead and use default materials here. And we'll just go ahead and do a quick play blast of this so we can see how exactly it looks. So I'll just go ahead and do that now. Alright, so let's take a look at our animation here, and we can see a nice dramatic bobbing, real feel of weight here being shifted back and forth. It looks a little over the top, but I actually like it. I think it adds a real dramatic flavor to this intense running scene. That something like literally is about to fall over on this guy in the midst of the action. For the actual rotation of the wheels, if you take a look at some of the harvesters here, you'll see there's only one little icon here, or one little control curve to actually animate the entire wheels, which is very, very nice. Problem is it's very hard to judge the rotation rate to match the ground. So there's a way that we have to kind of identify that, or just use a pictorial presentation of understanding, is it matching up with the ground's pacing? So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and extend out our animation first, back to the first frame, and go back to frame 1 here, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and create, under renders, a new render layer. So I'll go ahead and create a new render layer. And I have to assign that render layer because there's nothing in there right now. And I'll go ahead and grab my 3 harvesters and my camera, and I'll go ahead and add those to that actual layer. And we're going to do what's called a material override. In my hypershade, I'm going to go ahead and create a Lambert. And double-clicking the Lambert, I'm going to assign to the color an actual checker material. And I'll go ahead and graph input output that. So there it is right there. I'm going to go ahead and, while I'm on this render layer, I'll do a material override for 1 wheel per harvester. So I'll go ahead and assign it and make sure use default material is off. And I'll come over to this guy right here, do the same thing, and run back here and get him one as well. Going back to my render layers, you can see that all I did was create a layer that we will throw away eventually right here, but nothing has changed in the master layer. This has just been an overwrite of material for this specific layer, and we're going to get into those a lot later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead under my display layers. I'm going to hide harvesters 2 and 3 for now because I don't want them to bog down the system, so to speak. And I'm going to go ahead and set a few keys here. So at frame 1, I'm going to hit S for the rotation and get kind of close up here. And I'm going to go to about frame 20, and I'll just rotate this a little bit and hit a key. And now I'm going to start to judge, does this animation look right? And to kind of get a better idea as far as the fluency of the animation, I'm going to go into the graph editor, and here's the rotation Z. I'm going to hit F. And I'm going to lasso grab the keys and go curves, post infinite, linear. And we're going to go ahead and view infinity as we can here. And here's where the infinity just keeps going. It's kind of like a dash representation. So we can adjust this, and that will actually change the rotation and keep going and going and going. So let's go ahead and kind of play it through real quick and see, is this matching up properly? And from what I can tell, it might increase a little bit of speed there. So I could go ahead and bring it down just a little touch right there. Play it back again. Remember, this harvester has a change in gears. It goes a lot faster by shot number 2. The first shot, it kind of meanders through. So we kind of come to a stop, and I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. And I'm going to come to frame 142, and we're going to set a key. So as you can see, the infinity goes on and on and on and on. And if I hit a key here, it just continues on. So we have to readjust by frame 200. As you know, frame 200 is when disappears again. So again, I'm going to go ahead and hit S at 200, and we'll go ahead and rotate this a little bit and start judging. Again, the infinity continues, as you can see here. So here is the first shot, and we can take these if we want to and make them linear, just so they're nice and sharp. And I can adjust this so that it's rotation. So you see the rotation is half the amount of the rotation here, because in shot number 2, the harvester is really rolling. So we have to adjust this up and down as far as what we want, and that will just continue on, so forth. So it's kind of like just judge and see how it looks. I'll go ahead and play it through. Sometimes you can't really judge it by playing it. You just gotta watch it. You can see it's sliding. So we really need to up the ante here. So I'm gonna go ahead in my graph editor, and I'm gonna take this key and shift and middle mouse drag it down so that we get more acceleration here. And then we're gonna judge it and see, is it moving fast enough? I'll go ahead and play it through real quick. It's really moving. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Just keep an eye on it. This is the biggest thing that screws people up a lot. It's because they're just like, what is going on here? I don't know. And they find out later on it looks like their wheels are spinning in their render. So it's just something to keep in mind of. So I'm going to go to my side view here as well and just see how the rotation is looking. And I'd say we've got it. Could use some tweaking, but I'm pretty happy and pretty confident with this. So with all of that done, we know for sure that our tire rotation is good. So all we have to do is come under our render layers and right click and say, go ahead and delete layer. So we're back to the master layer. Our animations have already been set in. All right, so I wanted to take a little bit of a break here and take a look from an overview of what we've done so far. I've got all our animations in pretty well. We can see where the animation skips over for the Harvester 1 as it goes from shot 1 to 2. And we just start to see kind of like all the curves we set up. So it's been a lot of work. So the next thing we have to do is start on our road toward render layers and lighting. But before we do that, we have to add puddles of water, and we have to add some ground grass for masking and reflections.